Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today, and this is by request, and I've had more than a few requests for this one going back a couple years to when I first started talking about ancient America. So we're going to go down to a site here in Iowa and do a little talking, and in this series I've gone over how these sites were treated and what remains today, and it varies all across the United States. But first of all, I just want to say thanks to Timothy Saunders and Cynthia for having me on their show, The Other Side of Midnight, Sunday night. I enjoyed the 3-hour talk, and I will leave a link below if you want to listen to that. And I've also been invited on a couple other shows, and it looks like July 13th is one of the days, but I'll have more information coming on that in a little bit here. But let's go down to Effigy National Monument in Iowa today, and I'm going to talk about what is here. You can't see much from overhead. Now here we are down on Google Street View, and I guess I'll call it River View today. But here is the area where effigies are carved, or mounds. Effigy mounds are built up here. And boy, living out here in Las Vegas, I kind of miss fishing. I'd be casting for maybe some smallmouth in this area. That looks like a pretty good fishing spot, but oh well, I digress here. Well, let's just do a little reading on this area and what extends up the Mississippi River here for quite a ways. There are hundreds of mounds and effigies in this area. Bears, birds, reptiles. But here is one of the more famous ones. This is called the Marching Bear Mound Group, and this goes on a ridge between the water here. And that goes for quite a ways. These aren't small mounds, but they theorize these are bears marching. But the age of these and who built them, let's just read a little here. It says a 2,526-acre monument preserves more than 200 mounds, including 31 in the form of bear and bird effigies. People known as the Woodland Indians built the mounds. The Woodland culture dates from 500 BC to about 1200 AD, and are kind of generalizing here. But we have different names for different groups, and even different researchers have different names, and they all kind of get muddled if you ask me. It says the woodland culture is broken down further into 3 different subcultures: the early woodland, also known as the red ochre, the Hopewellian, classified as middle woodland, and the effigy or late woodland, and that's what we're talking about today. But this is really based on guesses and hunches, and how much research has really been put into the dating of this. But it says between 800 and 1600 years ago, in the late woodland period, American Indians began building earthen effigy mounds in the shapes of animal, birds, and reptiles. The hunter-gatherer culture that built these mounds thrived on the rich natural resources of the Mississippi waters, wetlands, and forests. They lived in large campsites along the river in the summer and found refuge under limestone rock outcrops in northeast Iowa. In the winter, they survived by eating freshwater mussels, wild rice, nuts, fruits, berries, and by hunting white-tailed deer, bear, bison, turkey, and waterfowl. On the 2-mile round-trip walk on the Yellow River Bridge Trail, visitors at the monument can explore a wetland similar to the ones that the Indians in northeast Iowa depended on for survival. It says, why these mounds were constructed remains a mystery. Archaeologists and researchers hypothesize that some of the mounds were built for religious ceremonies, burial ceremonies, as clan symbols, or possibly as a way to connect their people to their ancient ancestors and the spiritual world. It says they might have been built for religious ceremonies or burial ceremonies. Well, a ceremonial purpose is really a general way of classifying something if you just want to be broad and probably correct in a general way, as a way to connect people to their ancient ancestors in the spiritual world, and that's what the animals represented to the ancient people. They exemplified traits of the gods, so that last thing there, a connection to the spiritual world, I like that as more of a guess than anything. Now these effigy mounds cover quite a ways, and they extend all the way up into Minnesota. So the purpose of these and how many of these, I think that is a great question. There are different types of mounds. Here you can see simple circular mounds, animal effigy mounds, and what these animals are here, anybody's guess. And then we have these long mounds here that extend for quite a ways. But these seem to have a singular purpose, and I'll show you that here in a second. Now here's one of the large bear effigies, and these are all lined with stone, kind of on a raised up mound. I'm not sure how much of this has been repaired in recent times. Now here's an area that was cleared by trees, and it appears a lot of this area was made into mounds and platforms and different areas of importance. Now here's a pic of one of these low long mounds that goes for about 100 feet, and it appears these could be very well used for astronomical markers aligned to certain sunrises and sunsets. But it seems pretty good preservation has gone on at Effigy Mounds, and then there's been some stuff that isn't very cool. It says, a former superintendent of Effigy Mounds National Monument has been sentenced to serve prison time, home detention, and pay restitution for stealing and damaging the remains of more than 40 Native American people. But this story is about 3 years old. It says, a Thomas Munson was sentenced in federal court on Friday, July 8th for stealing the ancient remains of more than 40 American Indians. Munson removed the remains from the museum collection of Effigy Mounds National Monument in 1990 and concealed them in his garage for more than 2 decades. Most of the remains were originally excavated from within the monument during mid-century archaeological studies of the mounds. They were subsequently organized by catalog and ascension numbers within the collection drawers of the monument's curatorial facility. On or about July 16, 1990, Munson carried a box of human remains removed from the facility to his car, directed a subordinate to do the same, and then drove the stolen remains home for the purpose of concealing them, separating them from their associated funerary objects. These remains were recovered during an investigation. It says this is clearly an outrageous criminal act. There can be no explanation for what Munson did. Now, I think it's important that we hire people with the best intentions at these sites. It also says here, controversies. From 1999 to 2009, Superintendent Phil Ewing oversaw more than $3 million in illegal construction of boardwalks, trails, and other structures that damage irreplaceable archaeological artifacts. She failed to conduct consultation with affiliated American Indian tribes and follow procedures of the National Historic Preservation Act and other statutes. The Park Service conducted an internal investigation, finding numerous violations, but no intent to damage the park. It said these effigies are carved over a widespread area. Here is the area of Effigy National Monument. Up here near New Lisbon, Wisconsin, there is quite a few effigies. But I will leave this link below, and it goes over mounds and effigies built here near New Lisbon, Wisconsin. Now here is a cliff facing with a Thunderbird carved on it. And tomorrow I'm going to go on a little exploration, and I'll hope to have a video up on the weekend on that. Now here's a website from Luther College, and they go over this area of the ancient United States that these effigy mounds were created in. It says the oldest evidence of inhabitants in the driftless area, and that's the area of the Mississippi River area that they are specifying here. It says the oldest evidence of inhabitants in the driftless area are Folsom and Clovis projectile points, which date back to well over 10,000 years old. However, the inhabitants exclusively associated with the construction of the effigy mounds are from the late Woodland period, from 1400 to 750 years ago. And I think that is a pretty good guesstimate, but the original builders of some of these mounds could have gone back a lot further. Up into Minnesota, we have some effigy mounds here built. I think these are called the Capoli Mounds effigy groups. But birds were a common theme through ancient cultures as a connection to the afterlife, soaring to the heavens. And of course, in Egypt, we have Horus the falcon. So I think this is associated with some afterlife scene here or importance. And a little later here, it goes into an explanation why these places were built. It says, they were a sacred space where, after taking their survival from the environment, the people reciprocated by putting something back into the earth. In this he saw that the mounds create an illusion rising from the earth while merging with it. Everything comes out of the earth and ultimately goes back in, and I like that thought. But I want to thank the people for their messages on this site. This is a pretty fascinating area, and if you have followed me for a long time, you know I like to be comprehensive and thorough, so this is a place that I need to do a video on. What was the purpose of these original mounds and the effigy mounds that depicted animals? Well, I would appreciate your comments. I know there are a lot of different theories, and I think we have some bison in this area that were depicted. Once again, here is the LIDAR, and they say these are bears marching in a row here. Here you see a winged creature with its arms outstretched. Could very well be a connection to afterlife stories of this culture. And here you see one of those long, low mounds that appears to be connected to solstice events, so that definitely would connect with afterlife stories. But that's one I wanted to add to my Ancient America series. I've had more than a few requests on this site. Never done a video specifically on Iowa here. My son lives in Des Moines. Just thought I would mention that. But I thought this was pretty interesting. A widespread culture here was putting effigy mounds all over this area of the world. Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota could have had as many as 100,000 mounds originally. I think we have totally lost track of how many mounds were here originally. Just some remain today. We give this culture that was here maybe 2,000 years ago a lot of general names because we don't know the name of this culture. Hope you thought that was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.